the thing that I'm taking away from this is that there are positives, there are good things coming. Are they moving at the right pace? Have we got the skills to facilitate that continual pace?
You cut the data by any number of sort of time periods and any number of sectors, and it can look good or bad depending. If you zoom out and take more of a macro view, then I think the sort of medium term predictions still look broadly where they were. So it may not provide much comfort to people that are going through it at the minute. And I appreciate it is a tough market for some people. If you can steer through this period of uncertainty, then hopefully there's some better stuff on the horizon for you.
Episode 95, and we start with the bombshell of somebody's won some awards, haven't they?
Oh, stop it.
What do you mean stop it? You asked me to introduce you like this.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah, money's in the post. No, it was the Construction Marketing Awards last week, which for my agency SLG is a big old deal for us. And we did well. We're the most awarded agency on the night. Three wins and one highly commended, including best use of AI, which I mentioned on the show previously. So hooray for us! But really good night, really good. And again, congrats to the organisers at Beam Publishing. I know they took over the awards a couple of years back. It's the first time they've moved venues and kind of put their own stamp on it. And really, really good evening. And everyone there should be really proud of themselves. And a good mix of winners as well. A lot more in-house teams and a lot of different brands that maybe haven't been part of it previously as well. So hopefully that bodes well for sort of marketing within the sector and the sort of breadth of talent that we've got within it. So thank you for that, mate.
No, my absolute pleasure. And full transparency, he didn't ask me to introduce him. It was something to do with Lord or King or sitting on a throne, but it wasn't anything to do with the awards.
Anyway, thank you for listening, everyone, and see you next week.
Yeah. Good night. Let's get into these three headlines, shall we? Let's start with, as you so eloquently put it in your regular LinkedIn posts. It is a bit bleak in terms of good news stories, but we're here to find the shining lights in those stories. The first one we're going to cover is our good old friend skills shortages, but this time specifically within hitting net zero targets. Ryan, what's your take on this?
I'm really pleased that we're looking at this. When we've spoken about it before, I think even where things are bleak or on the surface seem bleak, we've got to tackle these things head on. I know we've been talking about skills within the context of house building principally and how we hit those numbers and unlock these sort of economic benefits and social benefits and so on. But obviously there's so many different things that the sector has to tackle at once, and we can't lose sight of net zero, can we, in the mix of everything else? But the impact on skills shortage means that, some of the stats with surrounding reports, we may never get there. It's the honest truth of it. It's pretty startling. And again, I should say, it's not a UK thing. There are stats within. So there's a government report that's been done by a cross-party collection of MPs called the Workforce Planning to Deliver Clean, Secure Energy report from the House of Commons. Yeah, rolls off the tongue. From the House of Commons Energy Security and Net Zero Committee. So cross-parliament, cross-party. And not fun reading the research that they've got. I think one of the things that stuck out to me, we've spoken in recent weeks about the sort of boom within further education and construction courses and other parts of the industrial strategy. 70% of those students not converting to actually enter the sector. So kind of studying it from an academic perspective and then not actually using that to propel themselves into careers in construction. Feels like an obvious fix to start off with, but I don't know about you, but that really jumped out at me as being an obvious thing to tackle.
That's sort of number one, isn't it? You look at it and you think of 30%. That's not. You get 30% in something, you're in trouble, really.
Yeah.
The first thing is, where are they going to, and why aren't they sticking around? But 70% is huge, and if you think of it like a bit of a relay, we're certainly dropping the baton at some point, and it looks like it's that conversion from building skills in people and youngsters, and then not taking that baton all the way around to the finish line and getting them to working in the industry that they're training in, which is quite surprising. But I've done some work in retrofitting, and it always it was a bit of a head scratcher for me in terms of the numbers that they all spouted and said that they wanted to achieve by a certain time. I think it's 2030 when I was doing some work in that part of the industry, and it never ever made sense to me in terms of how they were going to achieve it. Um, for me, it needs reframing. Whatever we're seeing as retrofitting and whatever these targets are, it might be okay to keep those targets, but I'm not saying I've got answers, but it needs some sort of reshaping or reframing from start to finish, like they're saying here, really.
I don't know if you've had a chance, because it's a monster of a report. I managed to skim read the body of and then have a good look at the recommendations, and that's one of the key things in there, is actually framing when we say these roles, what do we mean? Because to your point, I mean, like the Warm Homes Act and things like that, from a domestic retrofitting point of view, that gets mentioned, but so too is huge infrastructure projects and wind farms and so on. It's when we say clean energy skills or green skills, like, what exactly do we mean?
Yeah.
It's pretty massive. In fairness, I will say there are a lot of recommendations within there. The government comes in for quite a bit of criticism, as we've spoken about previously, that good things being done on policy change, but so much happening at once that you've got a sector that's kind of in shock at a point, as we'll come on to later on, where the economics don't stand up for a lot of this to be pushed through quickly. And a few things that I don't really want to get dragged into the sort of tabloid politics of it all, but some of the recommendations in here on skilled migration schemes, skilled passports, etc. In the current climate, it's an interesting one. But there's a lot of ground covered in the recommendations. Again, a solution needed to create that stickiness within the homegrown skilled labour market for the medium term, as we've discussed on that 70% figure. Devolution is a pretty crucial one as well. What does net zero look like within the various devolved regions across the UK? What does the labour market and the availability of labour look like in those particular regions as well? And more engagement with employers. I think, and there's a slight irony that comes out of a government report, but again, the criticisms of the government allied with that, I get the feeling that there's a lot of policy recommendations which are, they're welcome, they're interesting. People like you and I have conversations about them. But that they don't necessarily, or the feeling is that they're not meeting people where they are on the ground currently. The ambition might be this: where are we now in terms of the individual skills base within the businesses that make up the supply chain? So yeah, a lot in there to tackle. And again, it's one of those things that I think unless you break them down into individual recommendations, the whole picture feels a little bit overwhelming. And some things that I think are easier to implement than others, but that one of engaging with employers feels like a no-brainer. How you do that, given the fragmented nature of the supply chain, I don't know. But yeah, I would say that's a decent starting point to fix the immediate problems that we've got.
Yeah, and there's a really good quote by Chief Executive of the Federation of Master Builders, Brian Berry, and he quite simply says, a national programme must work for small firms, coming back to your point, with flexible training routes and funding that makes it viable for them to take on apprentices and upskill their workforce. And that's basically what you were saying, and it needs to work for the majority of the industry, and this seamless integration to upskill and train and get smaller organizations, sole traders, whatever it might be, involved in these skills. Because if you run a small business, as you and I both know, it is really tricky to onboard people and do all the admin and run the business and actually do the thing that you should actually be doing in the business.
No,
So
completely.
yeah, it's definitely needs the smaller organizations involved, but it's not down to them to put their hand up and say, yeah, we'll take that extra pressure on, because they're probably stretched as it is.
No, completely. And again, you're absolutely right. I think the other thing with that is that all of these SMEs are subtly different, and we are pretty unique, if not very unique. When you look at the ONS data of how the construction supply chain is made up, 98% plus SMEs. Whereas if you looked at something like, for example, if supermarkets were having this kind of issue, if retail was having this issue, you've got a number of very big employers that make up, quite it's still a competitive supply chain, don't get me wrong, but there is nowhere like as many.
Yeah.
you can take more of a top-down approach where they take the lead on that. It's just not possible. It's really not possible in our space. Might work with some of the main contractors, might work with some of the larger sort of multi-site manufacturers and national merchants, but the overwhelming majority of the supply chain, it's way too fragmented to take that top-down approach. So let's see. Going back to the very start of this, there can't be many more important things, can there, than the future of the planet? And I know that there's a bit of a pushback in certain quarters about net zero and net stupid zero and everything, but I think we're really going to regret not getting a hold of this sooner. I think if we're not thinking about skills from a future-proofing point of view and future of industry point of view, if it's just about servicing demand now, and again, we'll come on to it, just about getting the economy kick-started now, as useful as that would be, I think it's a huge missed opportunity. If there is a way to marry that kickstarting of economic activity with the future of the planet, then we have to find a way to make that work.
Well, speaking of kick-starting the economy, this is seamless transition into the next headline. I'm really keen to hear your take on this one. The headline reads: UK construction grinds back into gear, with the December construction index indicating a modest 3% project start increase registered in 3 months to November. Now, I know you've written loads about the peaks and troughs and ups and downs and positives and negatives of where the UK construction industry is heading short and long term. So what is your take on grinding these gears back?
It's such a mixed bag. I think if you were to look at the 3% increase over the 3 months, as you say, and just left the story there, then happy days. It's when you start to make year-on-year comparisons. And I'd seen, again, if you don't follow him, then please pause this podcast, get onto LinkedIn and go and follow Noble Francis, who's the chief economist at the Construction Products Association. He's done his usual post today, which is kind of looking at the bricks market as a proxy for house building activity and so on. Not only down year on year, but down significantly on pre-pandemic levels. So again, don't want to sound all doom and gloom. The point of this is to kind of get behind that headline. So the 3% start increase is welcome. We've spoken about it for a good few weeks. I think the sort of wider sector media has spoken about it for a while. Budget out of the way, new year coming. Hopefully this is the start of a more prolonged period of bouncing back. Honestly, this data comes from a Glenigan report where they seem to indicate that 26, 27 should be positive growth years for the sector at large. There's still some positives within there. Social housing is up, which covers a shortfall in private, but the net gain for housing is there. The office sector, 147% up, which is pretty mind-blowing. Obviously, it's the capital leading the charge on that, but even so, and a modest increase in infrastructure as well. And I think if I'm going to be glass half full, the fact that we've got some green shoots at a point that comes where there's been so much insecurity about budget policy increase, so the wider economy at large, the fact that there's still some things happening there that has to, hopefully point to some positives for the coming period. I don't know what you make of those numbers.
Yeah, like you said at the very start, it's a mixed bag, isn't it? And when you start to look at percentages and you start to look at numbers and figures, there usually is one take that can be seen positive and one take that can be seen negative, dependent on the time frame that you look at that and what you're comparing it against. But there is like loads of disparities between certain areas of the industry which are either declining or look to be on the increase, which is really interesting. And from a regional point of view as well, it'd be no surprise that London's the star of the show there, where certain areas, I think I read it might be Birmingham or the northeast, was looking fairly bleak in terms of the output and the outcome there. So there's that, and who wants that job of getting that balance across the country, right? But there is definitely some disparities going on up and down the country.
But just to interject slightly there, Pete, because that did surprise me a little bit, I have to say. If you think back a couple of weeks ago to the conversation that we were having on Sadiq Khan, looking to change rules around affordability, ruling for social housing to kickstart London, was a massive bias in having worked in Manchester for the last 2 decades. But all I see in the sky is cranes. All I hear is positivity about the sort of greater Manchester regional economy. So the fact that Northwest is so far down and London, again, it shouldn't be that surprising because there has been that economic disparity between London and the rest of the UK for some time now. But yeah, recency bias or whatever else, I just expected those two to be a little bit more, a bit more equal in that respect. So that did surprise me somewhat. But yeah, it's I've called it before, Schrodinger's sector, that you've got to hold so many contrary thoughts in your head at one time to get a clear picture of what's going on. So obviously, 3%, increase over the quarter is great, but then that comes off the back of 11 consecutive months of decline, according to the PMI index, which came out last week as well. So yeah, I guess it's just different data points and different things, but it's really tricky to pin down exactly where the sector is at the minute. As I say, my sincere hope and the rhetoric that I've seen post budget is that, yeah, people were just taking a watching brief to see what happened, and yeah, something has to give. So let's see. And like I say, I think the fact that there's a couple of parts of the supply chain and the economy that are starting to move is hopefully a good sign. And yeah, now that people, whether you happy with the budget, whether you sort of buy in or anything else, I think at the very least you've got some clarity about what's coming in the immediate term. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, and going back to those stories, I can't remember the time frames for those in social housing, but again, it's whatever angle you look at and whatever time frame, whatever part of the industry that you're looking at. So there's positives and there's negatives, and we're not here to be down and negative and bleak. So the thing that I'm taking away from this is that there are positives, there are good things coming. There is activity and movement, and like you said, you drive in up and down the country and look at major cities, and there are cranes. There are cranes moving, and there is building going on. It's not like we're stagnating and everything's closed. So things are moving. Are they moving at the right pace? Have we got the skills to facilitate that continual pace?
Yeah, well, again, to sum up with some positivity from Glenigan, who again, the owners of this data, Alan Willan, who's the economics director there, says, yes, these levels are lower than last year, but given the backdrop of volatile global markets, wild political speculation, and policy false starts, the situation could have been a lot worse. The Chancellor's recent statement will have gone some way to reassuring contractors and subcontractors that the government remains committed to the various capital projects and upgrades it promised. So good news on the infrastructure side of things, etc., social housing. There will be industry-wide fingers crossed that this materialises into concrete funding so shovels can be committed to the ground in earnest. All this going to plan will bear out the predictions we made last month in our autumn forecast, which indicates growth returning to the UK construction market in 26 and 27. So, yeah, I think if to your point, you cut the data by any number of sort of time periods and any number of sectors, and it can look good or bad depending. If you zoom out and take more of a macro view, then yeah, I think the sort of medium term predictions still look broadly where they were. So it may not provide much comfort to people that are going through it at the minute. And I appreciate it is a tough market for some people, but yeah, if you can steer through this period of uncertainty, then hopefully there's some better stuff on the horizon for you.
Yeah. As we're moving into the season and we've managed to get through Black Friday and Cyber Monday and whatever other days we want to we want to call them to make sure we're spending our pennies before Christmas. Let's take a look at how we can actually save some money with a bit of a 50% off transport. Well, this isn't an offer. This isn't a promotion.
What a bargain.
I know, yeah. But the final headline we want to cover, because I think it is a positive, and it's learning from our European brothers and sisters that London could have reduced the cost of transport projects by 50%, which, if we're to learn from anything, if we learn from that, then it could be a huge positive for some of the bigger projects and the smaller ones that are coming in the next few years.
Yeah, well, and there's quite a bit planned, isn't there? And we've spoken
Mm,
previously, so the post-budget commitment, rather the budget commitments, rather to the DLR extension, the commitment to Northern Powerhouse Rail, etc. Obviously, HS2 still needs to be finished on its way into the capital. So, yeah, timely. None of those projects are going to be cheap. So, if there are any lessons to be learned that can be
hmm
applied to that, and we can make better use of the investment, then yeah, I think I've mentioned before. I've finished reading a book recently called "How Big Things Get Done."
hmm
Which yeah, they did talk a lot about reference class forecasting, which is to look at the we get our estimates wrong, we overestimate, we're over positive on these things. It's why budgets overrun so much and times overrun so much on these types of projects. So it sounds like City Hall are doing exactly what they should be doing, which is to gather data from as many comparable projects as possible, and then try and find the median point. And it says like Madrid, if I'm not mistaken, was a kind of a key one for them.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly was, and that seems to be the shining light and the go-to.
Mm.
And according to this, things like the Jubilee extension that could have been halved in terms of cost from learnings from what Madrid do on their metro. Same with Elizabeth Line, a little bit lower, 20 to 50%, and Crossrail 2 as well. They're saying that costs could halve if there are to be any learnings. And what they put it down to is it the obviously it's the planning and financial models that they're currently using, but it's the other things like the simplification of stations and looking at things like that. Where do we need them to be all singing, all dancing?
Mm.
What do we need a station to do? And I'm not here to say right or wrong or what we need a station to do, but I mean, 50% is when you're talking about the costs of these things, that is something to sit up and take notice
Oh,
about, really.
completely. And to answer that question, I think first and foremost, they're there to serve a purpose. There is a utilitarian value to these things, isn't there?
Yeah.
So you start from there, and then if there's any additional funds or whatever else, then
Mm,
then go for it. I know there's lots of on the Paris Metro, for example. There's some beautiful stations,
yeah.
um, but it's its function first and foremost is to serve the people living in that area. Yeah, we absolutely can't lose sight of that, because I was the same thing, a bit of a romantic with these things. You look
Mhm.
at the initial report and think, oh, that sounds quite dull. But actually step back and what is its purpose? And for anyone that's lived in London for any period and had to deal with the tube, it all becomes wallpaper at a certain point. You just want a functioning transport network that gets you to where you need to get to. So, yeah, really interesting. I also, I love it when there's a construction story within mainstream media. The fact that you found this on the BBC,
Yeah.
the level of exposure that gets there is, yeah, it is really cool as well. So, yeah, I thought a really nice story, really useful. Again, City Hall doing exactly what they should be doing. Back to our previous story,
Mhm.
we know infrastructure. There's a lot of money tied up in that. I think 700 plus million in the infrastructure pipeline when we've looked at that in previous weeks. So
Mhm.
yeah, if we can make better use of that spend, not least that a lot of it is public money as well. Yeah, let's learn the lessons and try and implement them.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good place to end those three stories. Learning from others. And this is going to be my takeaway, by the way. Again, seamless on this podcast. Learning from others and not being afraid to not ask for help, but ask where best practices and integrate that into your systems and your processes and your projects, and learning from what's worked, and maybe not go on the cheap, but maybe not all the bells and whistles that we potentially don't need on these projects. Eh?
Yeah, no,
What
it's a
about
good
you?
shout. Yeah, I think from my point of view, it's kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, that it was bleak reading. Like you mentioned, my weekly post wasn't fun pulling that together. And as I'm sure it wasn't fun for you pouring through to see what was usable for podcast, but um, we've got to front up to where we're at, and there is always a positive that can be found within. It just maybe takes a little bit of lateral thinking or a little bit of zooming out to look at things in a broader context. But yeah, there's something there for us to latch onto. So yeah, while not maybe the fun sort of Christmas special kind of episode, um, yeah, I'd like to think that there's something in there for everyone to kind of latch onto and be positive about, and I think that's true within the sector. So yeah, that'd be my takeaway.
Yeah. Christmas specials, you say? Maybe we should look at see what we can do with those, eh?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Well, on that sneak peek, let's say a fond farewell to everybody listening. Thank you so much, and we'll speak to you next week.
See you next week.